by reading the land acknowledgement statement. On June 9th, 2022, we acknowledge that this sacred land on which Smiths Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation. We are grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We are also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smiths Falls. We are mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, being mindful of generations to come. All participants are asked to keep microphones on mute and cameras off during staff and consultant presentations. There will be an opportunity for public and committee members to ask questions following the presentation this evening. If you have not signed in with the recording secretary, please speak now. I am Mary Remick, recording secretary for the Planning Advisory Committee. I will now take attendance of our committee members and staff. Please raise your hand or declare your presence when I call your name. Chair John Walnes, Jacqueline Grimes, Councillor Wendy Elford, Bill Widdenmeyer.
Here.
Jack Anderson.
Present.
Councillor Jay Brennan.
Present.
Stephen McGuire.
Present.
Senior Planner Carl Granke.
Present.
To review, committee members are asked to raise their hand when they wish to speak. Alternatively, please find an appropriate opportunity at any available time to notify the chair verbally if you wish to speak. Item number 2 on the agenda is appointment of an interim chair in the absence of our chair and vice chair. Can I get a motion for appointment for interim chair for June 9, 2022?
I move that the fellow that's over there, Mr. Brennan, be the interim chair for this evening.
Thank you, Bill. And a seconder?
I would second that.
Thank you, Jack. And I will hand it over to you, Jay.
Okay, thank you. So we're on item number 3, and I need an approval of the agenda, so I'll entertain a motion for that.
So moved.
Moved by Bill, seconded by Jack, all in favor. Also, we have adoptions of minutes from our Planning Advisory Committee meeting of May 19th and our Planning Advisory Committee of May 26th. So I'll have entertain a motion for that. Councillor Alford, seconded by, if I need one, Bill Widdenmeyer, all in favor. Do we have any disclosure of monetary interest arising from tonight's public meeting? Or meeting? This will be our only subject. So we will now open the public meeting portion of the Planning Advisory Committee meeting. Please be advised you may leave this virtual meeting at any time. Applicants, agents, and members of the public logged in to participate in this public meeting are asked to please keep their microphones on mute and cameras off until called on by the interim chair. If you wish to speak to an application and have not signed in with the recording secretary, please speak now. Okay, I don't think there's anyone else. The purpose of this Planning Advisory Committee meeting is to consider minor variance application MD-22-02 for 45 Code Crescent. The application seeks relief from section 2.12.3 of the zoning bylaw to accommodate a front porch within the required front yard. This meeting is your opportunity to provide any feedback on this application, and the Planning Advisory Committee welcomes any questions and comments you may have. We encourage you to do so at this public meeting, as the Planning Act rules suggest that the public's ability to voice objections later in the process may be limited if a written or oral comment is not submitted. The committee is the approval authority for the minor variance applications, and the committee will review and consider all feedback regarding the proposal to inform the decision on the application. I will now pass the meeting over to our senior planner, Carl Grenke to report on notification and summary of application MD-22-02. Following this presentation, I will call on any public participants one at a time to offer feedback, comments, or questions regarding the proposal. The applicant will also be provided an opportunity to address any concerns brought to the committee by the public. So over to you, Carl.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening, committee, Mr. Saunders, and anyone watching from home. For those I haven't met, my name is Carl Grenke, Senior Planner with the town, and I will be presenting a staff report and recommendation on the minor variance application this evening. We have a quick PowerPoint presentation, so I'll just ask that be loaded. So this application is for 45 Code Crescent that is in the Ferreira Meadows subdivision just off of Harold Street. The owner applicant is Boyne Saunders and then Marilyn Murphy, and they are in attendance this evening. So welcome to both of you. Next slide, please. So the property is zoned residential type 5. It's a broad zoning category that allows single family homes as well as a variety of other uses. And this minor variance application pertains to a porch and a retroactive approval for a porch constructed at the front of the home. So the zoning bylaw allows porches to encroach into front yard setbacks. So the zoning bylaw requires a minimum 6 meter, 20-foot front yard setback for the home. However, an unenclosed porch that's less than a meter tall and less than 3 meters wide can project up to 2.5 meters into that setback. So it can go as close as 3.5 meters from the front lot line, so long as it is less than 3 meters wide and 1 meter tall. So in this case, the applicants are obligated to obtain a building permit to retroactively recognize the porch that is constructed. Unfortunately, the porch is a little bit wider than what the zoning bylaw allows at that location. So it is set back within the allowed projection at 4.3 meters from the front lot line. However, it's a little bit wider than what the zoning accommodates. Therefore, planning relief through this minor variance application is required prior to the issuance of that permit. Next slide, please. So there's a site plan that shows the front deck. It essentially squares off the front corner of the house. As you can see, it is a little bit wider than 3 meters, but it doesn't project any closer to the side lot line than what the zoning bylaw allows. We also note that there isn't a residence immediately on that next door. Those are backyards facing for homes facing Harold Street, and there's a Canada Post box. So it seems there's very limited or no impact there. Next slide, please. So there's just some photos of the site and the deck that's at the front. Next slide, please. So the purpose of the public meeting is to involve the community in considering planning relief for an application. Before the Planning Advisory Committee can grant the variance, we need to understand and hear any comments, concerns, or feedback that members of the public or statutory agencies may have. So under the Planning Act, we've circulated notice of the public meeting to all neighbors within 200 feet of the site, as well as posted it on the site and reached out to agencies for technical comment. Next slide, please. So feedback was quite light for this minor variance. We've received no agency or town department feedback, and and staff have had one verbal conversation with a neighbor who has no concerns with the application. He is supportive of it. Next slide, please. So before the planning committee can grant approval for a minor variance, they need to be satisfied that 4 tests set out in the Planning Act are achieved. So I will quickly go through those. Next slide, please. The first test is, does this meet the general intent of the official plan? That's the town's guiding policy document that outlines how we want to grow, where we want to grow, and criteria for what we'd like to develop. The official plan doesn't contain the specific regulatory aspect that's in zoning, but it broadly identifies this area for residential development and accommodates residential development that is in keeping with the characteristic of the neighborhood, and this would certainly apply in the opinion of staff. The committee also should consider some evaluation criteria set forward in the plan relating to minor residential minor variance applications. And those criteria include ensuring that the site is not overbuilt, that this doesn't limit the ability for snow storage or landscaping, doesn't impede municipal operations. In the opinion of staff, and based on the lack of feedback we've received from anybody else on that, this test is satisfied. Next slide, please. So the application needs to meet the general intent of the zoning bylaw, and porch and deck projections and limitations are intended to accommodate consistency of the streetscape and privacy between residences. So in this case, the structure is not within the sight line of motorists and pedestrians. It is flush with the side lot line. Really, it squares off. The garage projects slightly in front of the main building wall, and this largely squares that off. It is quite inobtrusive in terms of construction. Therefore, in our opinion, it meets the general intent of the zoning bylaw. Next slide, please. Finally, is this application desirable and appropriate? In our opinion, it meets that test. It is not a significant deviation for the neighborhood character. Their unenclosed front porches are common. They're appropriate. In this case, it is slightly larger than what the zoning bylaw allows, but definitely not it is well within the range of reasonable within this context. It does not affect the functionality of the residential use or impede abutting property owners. Next slide, please. The fourth test is that a minor variance application needs to be minor in impact and minor in nature. In our opinion, it is minor in impact and nature. We've not heard concerns from abutting property owners about impacts and its location, its design. The fact that it is uncovered, it does not project as far as what the bylaw allows, and the wide, it's less than 2 meters wider than the 3 meters presented. It is minor in our opinion. Next slide, please. So this is the committee is being asked to retroactively approve a construction here, but even though it is presently constructed, we are urged to, or you are urged to consider it as a proposal, review it as something that it had not yet been built. And in our opinion, the proposal, the application here does meet the 4 tests. It is recommended, staff recommend the committee approves the application subject to the 2 conditions that are outlined there. So just simply the first condition to approve the application in the form in which it's shown on the sketch, and then secondly, complete the building permit process. So I will I'll conclude my presentation, Mr. Chair, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Carl. We will begin by hearing from members of the public. All comments and questions need to be addressed through the chair. If you have signed in with the recording secretary and have requested to speak at this application, I'll call you on by name one at a time for your feedback. I don't believe that's anyone that has signed on even since the start of the meeting. So I'll move on. I'll now open the floor to the applicant to provide further clarification or comment on the public's concerns. And Boyne, if you'd like to speak now, you're more than welcome to speak.
Hi, thanks for the approval up to this point. That's great. The part about the building permit, I did pay the $62 or $67 back in August or September, I'm not sure, for the permit. So that has been done, sort of retroactive to having the porch built. And as I told Mary, we put about $75,000 of improvements in this house since we bought it exactly a year ago. We've had an addition put on the back, the full basement done, landscaping, above ground pool, fencing, and there were permits, of course, for all of those things. And Dave Sutherland and Jonathan came over, I think 3 times for every plumbing, how the porch was built and what have you. And in the gap of them doing their construction, the company that I hired, there was no place to sit because this house only came with a 1-chair porch in the front. And yet it was the model home 7 years ago by Parkview, and there was only 1 chair in the rear that you could sit. And so the 2 workers, the construction company, was really hot, and there was no place for them to sit when they take their 20-minute break at 10 and 20-minute break at 2 and an hour for lunch. So I suggested, well, could we make a porch that's bigger? And they said, yeah, they could do that. And I had a design from a fellow who does it in cement, but that was far too expensive. So we adapted it, and these guys do it in wood, of course, and they followed all the rules on how to build it and what have you. But it's still unbelievable that they never suggested getting a permit, even though there was permits for everything else and inspections all over the place. And it just never occurred to me. I just thought, oh, great, they'll have a shady spot. I'll put a canopy up and they can have their breaks in the hot sun. And just, we never, ever, it came out that I needed a permit. So when they came back for their final inspection for other parts of the house, they noticed that the porch was up and running and asked about it. And that's when all of this started. So we went out and paid for the permit. And this process then is the result of all of that. So, I mean, we admit that we were at fault for not being cognizant enough in order to get that permit in the first place. So that's all I have to say. And if any questions, please ask.
Thanks, Boyne. I'll ask, are there any questions from the committee members to Mr. Saunders? Bill?
This is not a question. I drove by there and I walked by and I noted the little porch on the front, and I thought that it was neat and tidy and quite attractive and useful. If it were much narrower than that, it would not be useful. So it's completely unobtrusive. It is sightly, and there is no reason in this world why, in my opinion, we should not approve this application.
Thank you, Bill. Wendy?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. No, I have no questions for Mr. Saunders. I have a couple questions for Carl. And welcome to Smith Falls, Boyne. With regard to, this is fairly new construction. So I'm just, before, when we dealt with one of these and we were talking about minor variances and we were delegating to staff, would this not be one of the very cases that we were talking about when we were delegating to staff?
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Carl, go ahead.
Yeah, so in order for currently the Planning Act requires minor variances to be approved by the Committee of Adjustment, and that's whose mandate the Planning Advisory Committee falls under. So in order for delegation of approval for minor variances, certain other items to proceed, as is contemplated in new legislation, we would need to have supporting official plan policy that authorizes this. So that's something that would be that when we look at our next official plan update, we can look at all of these new changes to the Planning Act and see which opportunities we want to use to look at delegated authority. So, for instance, site plan approval, we must approve as of July of this year under Bill 109, that needs to be delegated to staff. So we will be bringing forward amendments to the site plan bylaw to accommodate that. In this case, for minor variances and certain zoning, that's that's a may. That's something that we can do if we were to create official plan policies that authorize that. So at this point in time, that doesn't exist, but it certainly could in the future.
Okay, well, I'm certainly supportive. It's an attractive addition to Mr. Saunders' house. The neighbors and agencies to have no objections, so neither do I. But I would just say that I think this is the perfect situation that council and staff should consider incorporating into the next review of the official plan, because this is my definition of minor.
Thank you, Wendy. Anybody else?
I was just going to say, through
Jack?
the marvel of electronics, I didn't realize we were speaking to Mr. Saunders in Ireland, but I guess that explains why nobody came to the door when I rang the bell yesterday too. So anyway, no, I'm in favor of this. I think it's great.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jack. I'm obviously in favor. It's kind of bureaucratic in my view, but and I know we have to have these sort of things, and there's no fault to Boyne or anybody, you know, for putting a porch on and beautifying his house. My question, I guess, is, if, you know, one of the conditions was to obtain a building permit. I hear the owner saying that he's paid the fee. Is there going to be any additional cost to him associated with, because it is a condition to attain the building permit? Does he have a building permit? Thank you, Carl.
Mr. Chair, the permit cannot be issued until it meets applicable law, and part of applicable law is getting zoning approval, which would be
Okay.
would happen through this application. So I can't say whether or not there are any. Ultimately, the building department would undertake the review of the code and all of that and make that determination. But this is just one of those. Technically, it's a step that needs to be fulfilled before he gets it.
So it will include it, and then probably a subsequent inspection, but no additional cost is, I guess, my question.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, good. So I'm totally in support of this, and we have consensus. Does anybody else have anything to say? Okay, so we're tasked, the committee is tasked in making a decision on this minor variance, and if my committee member colleagues are ready to do so, I will entertain a motion to support it.
I would
So
so
by Jack
Second.
Anderson, seconded by Bill Widmeyer. All in favor? Okay, so thank you for attending and participating in the planning process for application MV-22-02. Any participants that have not signed in and require further notice regarding this application are asked to please reach out to the planning clerk, Mary Remming, by phone at the town hall. Appeal rights as prescribed in the Planning Act will be outlined on the notice of decision. If you have any questions on this application or the process, I invite you to get in touch with our senior planner or planning clerk at the town hall. This concludes the public meeting portion of the Planning Advisory Committee meeting. We will now move on to our next item on our agenda. And thank you for attending, Boyne. And you can stay, but it won't be long.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we have item 7, priority issues. We have none. We have no project updates. Yeah, now we do. Okay, Carl, go ahead.
So be very quick, Mr. Chair.
That's okay.
Following the public meeting for the zoning bylaw, we were hoping to have a resolution presented to PAC this evening. However, since that meeting, we've received some fairly substantial feedback from the Economic Development Department, as well as from a property owner in the town. So we're working on that right now with our consultants. So so we're hopeful in short order that we're going to come back with a revised draft with track changes and just a covering report outlining how the feedback we've received and how we've responded to that, and we'll present that to the committee for resolution and consideration before it goes to council.
Okay. So we did do a motion for the public meeting. We did, right?
I
Yes, we did.
recall- oh,
Yeah, we did. So maybe that update will be coming at the next meeting, July.
Oh, sorry, Mary,
Yeah.
I was just
Very
going to
good
say that I
wisdom.
don't have record of a motion for the draft comprehensive zoning bylaw.
So I think it was moved by Jack and seconded by Bill. Am I right?
Just a second here.
Is that what she's asking?
Yeah.
Well, we had a motion for the issue we just talked about. I didn't hear that we had a motion for,
Yeah, I don't believe we did have a motion for it. I'll pull up the minutes here and I will confirm.
Okay.
But yeah, as far as I recall, we deferred a motion because we had a commenting period of 2 weeks, which can.
Oh, no. I was talking about the public meeting. So
yeah, we
Oh,
had a
yes,
motion.
sorry,
for the
there
public-
wasn't a motion at the end of the public meeting.
yeah, okay. I'm old.
Lots of meetings.
Older.
Just wanted to confirm that.
No, no. Okay. So our next meeting is July 14th. And we're at the end of this, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Bill, seconded by Jack, all in favor?